What's up everyone, welcome to Workshop Rebuild. In today's video, I'll share with you guys how to remove your old pushrod tubes from your BMW Airhead cylinder jugs. And then later on in this video, I'll share with you guys how to install brand new ones like the stainless steel one that I have in my hand.
In order to remove the old pushrod tubes, a few tools are needed, like a machinist's hammer, a pushrod tube mandrel, a clamp, a heat gun to heat the aluminum cylinder jugs, gloves, and a straight edge. In my case, I'm using the main scale from a depth gauge that is ground on all sides. Before removing the pushrod tubes, it's good to know what height they were set at from the factory. To do this, we can grab our straight edge and run it along the bottom face of the cylinder jug and slide it towards the pushrod tube collar. As you can tell, the edge of the pushrod tube collar is still a shade lower than the surface. To determine the clearance, I will use a feeler gauge, and the gap turns out to be 1.193 millimeters or 47 thousandths of an inch. You will want to find the clearance of all four pushrod tubes to find the average height. This measurement can be used to install the new ones later on in this video. To remove the pushrod tubes, I secured the cylinder jug to the table with my clamp, and I made sure the pushrod tubes were beyond the edge of the table. Now I can check to see if I have access to the pushrod tubes from above with the mandrel, and everything seems to be just fine. Next up, you want to heat up the surface around the pushrod tubes with a heat gun or warm up the cylinder jug prior to the clamping stage in an oven. Once warm, you can drive the pushrod tube downwards and out with little effort. Be careful, the pushrod tubes are hot. On the right, you can see the bore for the pushrod tube, and on the left, I still have one more to remove. I will do the exact same thing to remove this one too. This is how bad the 50-year-old pushrod tubes look like, and trust me, they have seen better days.
A couple weeks have passed since I last removed the pushrod tubes and I got a lot of work done on the engine parts.
They have been vapor blasted and coated with Glacier Silver Cerakote. This coating has fully cured for 5 days now, and it's time to install the new stainless steel pushrod tubes. For the assembly process, I will need the pushrod tube mandrel, new pushrod tubes of course, a hammer for tapping them in, and a sealant. I'm going to use this anaerobic gasket maker by Permatex, but you could use Loctite if you wish. I also made up this head gasket surface cover out of vinyl flooring to keep the surface safe while I'm tapping in the pushrod tubes. With these tools and parts in mind, I can start the installation process. I'm going to flip the cylinder jug around and clamp it to the table. If your cylinder jug studs are still installed, you can place 2 pieces of wood beneath the cylinder and then clamp it to the table. To make the installation process easier, you can shrink your pushrod tubes by placing them in the freezer for an hour beforehand. You should also warm up your cylinder jug evenly with your heat gun or in an oven. Once handling the pushrod tubes, be sure to wear gloves so they keep cool. Next, guide the pushrod tube into the bore by hand and then align it to the correct angle. Once you're confident it's lined up, you can drive it in with your pushrod mandrel and hammer. The pushrod tube should be perfectly aligned within 1 to 2 taps. After this, check up on the pushrod tube collar height after a few taps. If you think you're getting closer to the specified height, stop and verify with your straight edge and feeler gauge. Now I have one more pushrod tube to install, and then I'm done with this cylinder jug. According to sources online, the clearance ranges from 1 to 2 millimeters on almost all BMW Airheads, but I think if you install the pushrod tubes to the factory clearance, you can't go wrong.
So I'm back on the other side of the shop, and the pushrod tubes are pushed into the correct depth on cylinder jug number 1. I did the exact same thing to cylinder jug number 2, and I did that off camera, but what I have in front of me here is now finished, and I can let the anaerobic gasket maker that I use fully cure for at least 24 hours. If you guys used Loctite or any other gasket maker of your choice, you'd probably want to let that cure for at least 24 hours before you go ahead and install this onto your engine. If you guys would like to read more about this installation process, I'll leave a link down below in the description. There are some other people out there that have done this before, and they also share some tricks and tips. So give that a read down below, and if you guys have any questions, you guys can always leave a comment down below in this comment section so I can get back to you and explain a little bit if you guys have any difficulties. So after 24 hours, I'm going to come back and see if everything is cured. If so, I can continue with the engine rebuild. And that video is coming very soon. So with all that said, I hope to see you guys very soon. Peace.